what would you like your first story to be about?
My first story, it's like my 100th time story.
No, I mean because tonight you get 2 stories because yesterday there was no story.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. I want the story. Found a red dot that turned into an orange dot that turned into a purple dot.
Okay.
Please and thank
I love it. Okay. This is the story of Henry the Molecule. Henry was a tiny, tiny bit of imagination condensed into a tiny, tiny point in time. It was the smallest particle of matter. But Henry was nonetheless alive. And all Henry could sense around him was balls of potential imagination bouncing against him. It felt so cool. Henry didn't know that it was part of an atom. It was part of a molecule. And the molecule was of a metal. And the metal was about to be hot because it was the brakes on a race car. So that tiny, tiny atom inside of a molecule, inside of a piece of metal, inside of the brakes of a race car was about to get super, super hot. This atom was like a dot, and it was the color blue. And it was nice and comfy and cool. And it had no clue what was going on. When all of a sudden, all his other atoms, friends around him, started shaking, hitting each other so hard, and he started turning orange. He was getting hot, and he was giving off light. And at that same time, the molecule he was in was doing the same thing, and the chunk of metal was doing the same thing, and the brakes were getting hotter and hotter because the race car was stopping. And then, even harder, the race car driver pushed the brakes even harder, and the brakes started getting even hotter. And when you looked at the metal, it was getting a little bit red. And when you looked at the molecule that was made out of the atom, that was Henry, that was in there, all of his friends were hitting each other like when they were in a dance party. Boing, 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 boing. And he was so happy that he started glowing blue, and then even purple. And then, poof, it started going down. And it was the most awesome experience in all of Henry's life, which was an atom.
Yay, best story ever.
Yay!
But what about the red part?
Yeah, he went from blue to red to orange, purple, all the colors.
You didn't say red.
I forgot the colors, but I meant to say that he went for all the colors.
Okay. Let's just say the same thing happened, but with red and first, and then the rest of those happened.
Okay, yes.
Best story ever.
Yay! Okay, what's your other story?
About the smallest eye in the world.
The smallest eye in the world?
Yes, that that made friends with the biggest eye in the world, and the biggest eye in the world could barely see the small eye.
Okay. This is the story of Jacinta. Jacinta was an algae. And as an algae, it's like a one cell, tiny, tiny thing that you could barely see under a microscope. You could never see it with your naked eyes. It's so tiny. But it's like an eye, because Jacinta, being an algae, can only see light. When she sees light, she's happy and she eats light. That's why she loves it. But Jacinta was like a tiny, tiny eye, so, so tiny that you could only see it with a microscope. And one day, as Jacinta was floating in the ocean, he landed in a huge beach. Of course, it was no huge beach. It was the eye of a whale, the biggest mammal in the world. And she felt herself at home. for she had no idea that she was in the presence of the biggest eye in the whole planet. It was the size of 10,000 Jacintas. And so Jacinta decided to make it its home. And so he lived there for all of her life, not knowing that she was living right next to the biggest eye in the world as she was traveling the oceans. One day, Jacinta grew old and abandoned her body as a little unicellular algae. And then she ascended on top of that world and understood exactly what was going on and how she had been a part of the whale and the huge eye and understood the whale and was so happy because she and the whale had been friends even if they didn't know it. And Jacinta's life had all the meaning she needed.
The
The end.
story.
Yay. Good night.